One of the most difficult things is to talk about future because we never know what's going to happen. We can only use certain things that we see in the market where we say, hey, this is where we see things moving. I often wonder what a business relationship manager would encounter in 10 years. Is that significantly different? But we can start seeing already that certain organizations that are now doing new things that no one else is maybe doing, and how the role of BRM fits in there, that can be in 5 to 10 years for other organizations that they finally get there. Yeah? So there is always a lag for certain organizations. The future, we hear a lot of different things. We are in the age of complexity, and what I call at least the age of complexity. There's a lot of complex issues that we need to solve, and that makes it more difficult. We do see a significant change in technology and how that supports organizations and the drive for that. So I'm going to talk about what I call the rise of the people platform, that specifically that focus on where are we going with people, basically, with the relationships. And then the next three elements are really focused on business relationship management for organizations. And that is how we drive value, how do we get value out of the use of technology or our people, basically, and how do we build strategic partnerships and evolving culture. This is a presentation that we often deliver to executive management, which of course has a slightly different perspective than when I'm doing that to a group of BRMs. We quite often talk to executives about different things at that moment, but I'm going to use similar slides to give you a bit of an idea what the challenges are, yeah, and what is going to happen with business relationship management. In my opinion, the future of BRM is bright. It's clearly that there is a future of BRM, otherwise I wouldn't stand here, to be honest. But for me, it is important for you to understand that, yes, it's not going to go away. It actually is going to be more and more important for organizations. So, the age of alignment is over. When I started working specifically around business IT in the mid-90s, we already started talking about alignment, business IT alignment, and to be honest, nothing ever happened. But in the beginning of the 21st century, especially with some of the progression basically in the market around Agile, IT service management, we started to see we need to become a service provider. And that was, for a lot of organizations, the goal, and for a lot of organizations that is still a goal that they have at this moment. I start to see more and more now that, specifically from Gartner, from Forrester, from any of the big firms, basically the analyst firm, it is about the age of what we call the customer-obsessed model, where we constantly look for our end customers, so the people that interact with your organization, how we are obsessed with making sure that they get the right things. Yeah, this is customer experience and sometimes user experience, but specifically customer experience. And this is a statement from Forrester, but it's interesting to see the switch to that. Now, when we see that switch, we need to start thinking about, okay, what does that mean? Organizations are significantly driven by technology. It is interesting, every time I put this slide up, I have something like, well, this is already outdated, because it's, I can put something new up here, and there is new things basically that's constantly coming. Mobile mind shift, yes, it's great if we start to look at mobile, but if you have not been able to do things mobile at this moment, you're too late already. Yeah, a lot of organizations have something like everything needs to be mobile. Especially the newer generation is focused on mobile, but I get to it as well. I do more sometimes on my cell phone during the day than actually on a laptop. The laptop is purely, okay, I need to work on something, everything else is through a cell phone. So we need to start thinking about that. We see cloud offerings, etc. Cloud was 10 years ago, yeah, we need to put things in the cloud, and some organizations are still struggling with that. And at this moment, we're starting to see the next wave, basically, which is serverless, which is more directly focused on your transactions and only paying for the transactions. That is driving significantly changes as well. People now say exactly the same thing as 10 years ago with cloud. Okay, what about security and all those kind of things? And we're not sure if we're ready. It's coming. Yeah, things are going to go significantly faster. There are robotics firms basically that charge basically per transaction that they do. They do millions of transactions, but they have whole models basically that you only pay for the transactions you use. Big data, everything is around data. Data intelligence, every company I work with will say, yes, we are doing something in the data analytics side. It is becoming more important. Yeah, anything from hardware stores, retail is specifically very data driven, but I start seeing it in healthcare organizations. I start seeing it in universities that it is about, okay, how can we drive better decision making? How can we get better access to our data that we already have? The Internet of Things, it's going to drive a lot of different things. It's going to be interesting. That's not just about home things, but there's a huge amount of use in the market. Manufacturing, of course, is looking at those kind of things as well. And it's going to be interesting to see what the effect of that is. We do see with the Internet of Things that infrastructure is going to be more and more important. And it was interesting to read an article around the fact is that infrastructure people now need to learn how to code, because coding, programming is directly done on the infrastructure components, on the network components, etc. And that is a significant change because they've never done that. It was more, okay, I'm putting this network component in, I'm done. But we're starting to see the coding now. But you also see here the wonderful silos, of course. You don't let a programmer touch your infrastructure components, but they need to actually now get in there to do the programming. So now it becomes like, okay, how are we going to work together on this? Or do we see infrastructure people actually starting to get coding skills? So a lot of things are changing. Now, on top of this, it is going to be about people. It is not about necessarily our drive to do everything in technology. It is about people and driving the right skill set, the right competencies in the new market. Any new IT organization, any IT skills that we're seeing in the organization are embedded in everything. And this article that was just published by Forrester, it is about things that you have something like new things around tech skill gaps will shrink, which means business people will get technical skills and technical people need business skills. So we're starting to see that drive in the market. The future of IT. The top one I love, boards and CEOs will look beyond financials to value of IT. It is not just about return on investment anymore, it's around, okay, what is the value we're really going to get out of that? Translate it into higher productivity, higher sales, lower risk, but also intangible value. Yeah, that customer-obsessed model that we're talking about, we see the satisfaction of our consumers is going to be a significant element of the value of IT. Budget allocations will go to real time. Everyone is looking for this because it's like, you know what, that yearly budget cycle is just painful. Yeah, most of you will have some, here we go again. Yeah, and then halfway through you have some like, well, there's not enough budget for you so anymore. Yeah, you can't get this. While we see organizations, for instance, with concepts like zero budgeting, just say, if you want something, you need to write a business case for it, and then you get it. Yeah, it will fit, as long as you show value. CIO personas will multiply. which basically means we need to have more that CIO level skill set competencies, and that's what we're getting with business relationship management as well. They quite often fulfill some of that role. Now, in the age of complexity, I'm just going to put these two models up, not to actually go into detail on these. But the age of complexity is started in the 21st century, especially in the first 10 years that we started to see this, and now it's really a challenge we see in organizations. It's around decision making and it's around situational awareness. Lots of organizations are struggling with situational awareness. How is the value chain that we have, anything from customer to how they interact with us through websites, all the way to our data center, how is that adding value to it? But also, how do we see technology components, for instance, or even people, moving towards custom skill sets or custom technology all the way to commodity? Every single technology is driving towards commodity. Yeah, we see this continuously. And one of the things is, these are Wordly maps. If you're interested in that, there is a free book on Medium that you can look at. They have a training course, an e-learning training course. I've gone through it and it's actually really good. It talks about how you build value chains, but also how that actually is, what decisions you can make based on that. That is about having situational awareness. Decision making, and I'm using the example as IT, but I see it in other groups as well, HR and finance, etc. But decision making, we quite often do very simple. It's like, okay, it's obvious, okay, this, we categorize it and we just do something. And that's one of the challenges we have. We can't do that with complex situations. There's even a difference between complicated and complex. Complicated means I need to talk about it and then we find a solution, build a plan, and this is what we're going to do. In complex, we have no clue what's going to happen. We quite often need to throw something at it, see if it sticks, if we can move it to a little bit different direction. That is part of decision making. Again, this is the Cynefin framework from David Snowden. There's some books around that. It really helps people to understand how to make decisions in a complex environment. And to be honest, a lot of business relationship managers are directly in that complex environment. Nothing is like, okay, I'm just going to follow this process and everything will be fine. Because there's all different kind of other things that are going to happen. So that's what we see in the market. The rise of the people platform. What is happening? We see more team work, more collaboration. Some of you might be familiar with the 2 pizza rule from Amazon. 2 pizza rule from Amazon is focused on smaller teams. If you can feed them with 2 pizzas, that's the right size. If you can't feed them with 2 pizzas, it's not the right size. Lots of you will have had meetings where there's 30 people in the room and you wonder why half of them are there, because they don't open their mouth basically during that whole meeting and they just sit on their phone basically because it's mobile, yeah, and we just can do things. We're starting to see the more significant effect of smaller team, cross-function collaboration. Business IT convergence quite often drives also business and IT people in one team. Yeah, so there is some great work that is being done in organizations around that. Hierarchies. In a lot of organizations we still see very much the direct and control. It's very difficult for some people to walk up to a director or a VP and have a discussion, because that you don't do that, you'd only talk to your peers. And that's the hierarchies. We are starting to see that those go away. Now you can still influence a lot with peer-to-peer influence, but for me it's important to start thinking about, okay, how, if the hierarchies go away, what is the leadership that we need to be able to support the organization? And this is where leadership is coming in. New leaders that are coming in are way more focused then on the support and inform mentality and helping their staff instead of saying this is what you need to do. And that's a shift in leadership that needs to happen. Interesting point is that the average age of CEOs is dropping quite dramatically. It went from somewhere in the top 50s, 58, 59 average 10 years ago, to about 54 right now. Now I'm pretty sure some of the big companies don't help, but we see a lot of younger leaders actually coming in. And that is something to be aware of, that they will come with different leadership styles, different ways to actually do things. BRM is playing a key role in facilitating all of this. This is where you come in as a business relationship manager. You start to drive different ways of leadership. You're starting to look at different behaviors. That means this whole plan, build, run model that we've developed in the age of the service provider is leaving. It doesn't work. We build silos. Now I can tell you, in any way I organize after that, I still build silos, because somehow people, when they get into a certain team, they automatically start to focus on, hey, I want to, I only want to do what I'm doing and my team, etc. So even when you build teams, you start seeing that there's automatically silos between the teams. But we need to break down specifically the silos between plan, build, and run. Some of you might be involved in DevOps or something like that, and Agile, etc., that tries to focus on this. But it is something to be aware of. What are we seeing at this moment? Strategic differentiation through business relationship management is collaborate, integrate, and orchestrate. We're starting to see more collaboration. BRMs drive that. They drive that collaboration in the market. They understand the customers. They know how to do strategic partnering. And they drive value. They have way too much fun next door. Yeah, apparently, oh yeah. Okay. Integration, people integration, process integration, technology integration. There's so many things that we start to realize that we can't just do technology, we can't just do process. And I can tell you at this moment, it is very, very difficult to do anything without people. Yeah? But it's the last thing we think about. We don't talk about behavior. We don't talk about what is desirable behavior. We talk about, okay, how can we do this process? How can we do this technology? How can we use this technology? Any discussion I see, the first question I have, well, what about the behavior? What is the behavior that needs to change? And start with that. Orchestration, we need to start looking at optimizing value, and I'm going to talk about that. And then, of course, we still have protecting assets, security, and all those kind of elements. Now, most of you will be familiar with the BRM role, the BRM discipline, the BRM capability. For me, I mean, I do a lot of coaching, and the coaching is quite often sometimes on the role, but sometimes the coaching is specifically on the capability. What are we going to do? How are we going to produce results? And in that, you quite often start to look at, okay, how can we drive different things? How can we drive that element of, yes, this is what we need to accomplish, yeah, from an investment perspective. And that's where we drive value. And I'll give you some examples in a bit. Okay, so let's talk about driving value. So we talked about the people, the context basically, and that people-driven approach, more team-based, more collaboration, more that business IT convergence. The following three elements are driving value, strategic partnership, and a little bit on evolving culture. First thing is driving value. We talk about convergence all the time, business IT convergence, but that means business and IT people need to sit together. Is anyone doing data analytics? You know that you can't do data analytics independent from a business perspective. You have to start working with business people to be able to do business data analytics, because both business skills and IT skills need to be there at the table. We also see in that convergence that happens there, we still see, of course, lots of areas where there is a lot of distance. And that's sometimes in the mentality. I worked with a healthcare organization where the BRM said, we have an innovation group in IT. And she said, every time I try to actually get them to interact with my director, they have something like, we're not ready yet. Yeah, we're looking at innovation, but we're not ready yet. Yeah, we're still looking at artificial intelligence, virtual reality, etc., whatever it is, and we're still working on that. We're innovating. Okay, good. Sorry, I'll go back. Yeah, I'll wait. And she said, eventually I heard that they went to the president of my hospital, she said, where I have a discussion with, who had asked around certain new technologies. And they basically were close to kicked out of the door. They didn't involve the BRM. They came from an IT perspective and said, look, this is all this new technology we have that we think is can really be valuable for your organization, yeah, for the hospital. What was the reaction of the president? We've had that 2 years ago. Yeah, we've already been working on that. We're looking for the next thing. And you're basically telling us 2-year-old ideas that we're already way past. This is the disconnect we see of enterprise IT thinking that innovation can happen in the centralized environment without anyone basically being involved in that. So this is one thing as from a BRM, you drive that value, you deliver the company and the customer vision continuously through that. Now, what are your focus areas? Most of you will know this, hopefully. You work with company strategy, you're involved in company strategy, you understand the company strategy, you help with situational awareness, where do we need to move, what is this area going to? I had posted an article I found on, I can't remember where I found it actually, to be honest, but it was about gaming in healthcare. They were doing research around the fact that certain people with in autism spectrums, etc., can really benefit from certain games. And they wanted to use that as a therapy approach basically to do that. Now, well, guess where that game is going to run? That is going to run on your IT system. Most of you will have security around those kind of things, that you're not allowed to run any games because that is not business-like. Yeah? That needs to change. That mindset needs to change suddenly then. So the key thing is there is innovation in everything. External customers, most of you are using your organization's services that you offer to the market. Yeah, I was working with a large financial organization in the US, and I had something like, any of you customers? Oh yeah, everyone is a customer. Yeah. I said, how is your website to actually enter your not your in this case it was investments, etc. And they had something like, oh, it's awful. So what do you do about that? Yeah, that's your customers actually have exactly the same experience. So work on that. Shaping demand, we're going to talk a little bit about shaping demand, but also driving result, optimizing business value. How can we drive further the business value? Now, valuability, this is something that is coming out this year in further development. We are going to do a formal assessment where we are going to talk about the different levels in an organization, where value is sporadic, so we're not really value focused, all the way to value is optimized. I can tell you most of the organizations where I do the very high level assessment at this moment, they are somewhere between value is sporadic and value is definable. We do very limited on that. It's not clear what the strategy is. It's not clear what we're delivering from a value to the organization. And we need to start moving towards that value optimized. Now, how do we do that? We need to have a very formal approach for that, which means we need to start looking at what is our business strategy, but also how do we go from current business operations to future business operations. We need to have 3 steps basically in there, 3 high-level steps. Value discovery, which means idea generation, value plans, looking at the opportunities we have. This is quite often your intake process or your idea generation, where you capture ideas and say this is what we're going to work on, all the way to understanding how we're going to measure this. Value realization is anything from we have a business case all the way to we deliver it. I always love project managers hearing saying we achieved the benefits because we delivered we finished the project, we delivered the solution that they needed. And I always have something like, no. You don't have any value yet. Because if no one is using it, there is no value. So we need to start looking at that end phase of value results. How do we recognize value? How do we validate there is actual value that we deliver? This is mainly the focus of the value optimization or the value-focused organization workshop, which drives value optimization as well. This is a 2-day workshop run through the BRM Institute at this moment, focused on the different elements of this. How do you measure value? What are intangibles? What are financial values? And if you look at these values, we quite often see, for instance, anything from top-line revenue to bottom-line savings to risk mitigation to, and what I've always add here is intangible value. Some of you are not very financially focused in your organization, which automatically means, okay, how can we measure then in the intangibles? Yeah, what is the value of a certain system for, I mean, in universities for students? Yeah, what is the value of the system for the students? Intangible value can be satisfaction. It can be just acceptance of that is a new technology and that we're using it, all the way to, yes, I feel more productive, although I might not do more, but it's easier to work with. Yeah, so that's the intangible value you need to focus on. It's not always translated into dollars, and that's the key part of that. Now, that is more on value. We see this message is normally given to board of directors, to executive management, and they say, well, yeah, this is what we need. Now it's up to you, BRMs, of course, now to actually start working on that. And you need to get support for that, of course, as well. I hear a lot of issues around value, for instance, that we don't get sufficient support to do pre-work. Yeah, we can get support when we have a business case and it's a project, but to actually get an enterprise architect to spend a couple of days on something, okay, which project code do I need to book on? Yeah, that's quite often the first question you get. So that is one part of that, driving value. Now we're going into strategic partnerships. Most of you will be very familiar with the maturity model, yeah, from a relationship between business and IT groups or any other peer group. Can be HR, can be finance. And we can start looking at, okay, we're ad hoc order taker, service provider, trusted advisor, strategic partner. Now, in the business relationship management playbook, yeah, so that's the book that we're drawing for later on, there is one chapter on how to build a trusted advisor maturity, basically, with your business partner within 60 minutes. That means understanding where we're going. If you, a story from one of the BRMs, if you go to your business partner and say, what do you need? Guess what they're saying? I don't know, what do you have? Yeah? Well, this one person actually did this and got the answer of, you're the third IT person that asked me what I need. Yeah? I wish by now you just would talk to each other and so that everyone knows basically what I need so that I don't have to explain it again. So figure it out yourself because I've told it several times now. Yeah? If that BRM would have gone in with, look, I really would like to improve the relationship. I really would like to focus on how can we become that strategic partner with you and set the stage for that, that can change the message, that can change the discussion. And I've worked with several BRMs and coaching them in that area and preparing for that meeting. I mean, the preparation for that meeting can take a long time. And it's interesting to see how we get way further with strategic partnership. If someone says at the start, I don't want to be a strategic partner, that's great, that's good. I don't have to work on that then, yes? So focus on someone else, yeah? Because most of you will be busy enough. So if you have one person that doesn't want to work with you, okay, well then if it's not important for the organization, then maybe we should do it. This is strategic partnering. relationship maturity model, converged teams rather than aligned, etc. Now, building strategic partnership means different mindset quite often. When we get to the higher levels, we need to understand how we can think together, how we can act together, and how we can achieve together. In a book called Organizational Change and Neuroscience, which is a little bit of a geek book, I fully realize that. It's a really wonderful book to read if you're interested in organizational change, because what they did was focusing on what is happening with the brain during change. And one of the things they said, certain words trigger different parts of the brain. If I ask you, Basili, or if I, Basili, tell you, okay, let's do this, you might actually have something like, yeah, we'll do this. But in your mind you have something like, I'm not committed here. I have the feeling that let's do this, that person who said that is going to do it. If I say let's do this together, suddenly I'm involved. I have to be involved. So that means that we're together, and they showed that in brain scans, etc., that it triggers a different part of the brain. So that's something that you need to work on and start thinking about what are the words that can drive different reactions, for instance, for them. That means if we think together, we are intertwined with strategy from the start. Executives understand the consequences of everything, all the way to acting together, investing maybe more aggressively because we're saying, hey, this is what we actually want to do, all the way to achieving together. And we do see that this results in, specifically through BRM, in significantly more results from that. That can be revenue, that can be profit targets. And quite often we see that we're driving towards the right information. That means that we need to think about value, how we drive value. We need to start thinking about how we drive those strategic partnerships and drive that basically together, how we're going to work together with our business partners to be able to get that convergence going, all the way to culture, cultural changes. Some of you, or maybe all of you, will currently have something like Agile is the key thing to do. We need to be Agile and we need to start working in Agile. Agile requires a different mindset. It requires a different behavior. I'm also not convinced that everything is suitable for an Agile approach. We actually do see that commodity services do not really benefit from an Agile approach around it, but it really needs to be very strict and very controlled, and quite often you can go even to Six Sigma, Lean IT, etc. Agile is suitable for specifically custom-built, new ideas, innovation, because you can try things out, and then certain other things you need to do more controlled. That means different styles, different cultures, different leadership styles, and that means we need to look at different behavior. I already showed you the behavior, and smaller team-based, ownership rather than accountability, autonomous, speed, precision, flexibility, all those kind of things, value-based. Behavior is something that needs to be discussed. What is desirable behavior? What is undesirable behavior? Every single time you're in a meeting, you know there is certain undesirable behavior and you wish you actually could address this. Well, sometimes you have to. But that also means, for instance, why are certain Agile initiatives failing? Because leadership doesn't want to change. Leadership is still in a very direct and control mentality. I want to know exactly what is happening, I want to sometimes micromanage this, etc. They lose control in an Agile environment. They don't have the same control anymore because the team actually makes decisions and moving forward. That is a different mindset that you need to have. The military that we always think that is very direct and control organized is actually not. It started with the SEAL teams, but now individual teams get the mandate, this is the strategy, this is what we're trying to accomplish. Do whatever you need to do to actually accomplish that, but keep me informed. Just tell them this is what we're going to do. And if the general has something like, hey, yeah, that's the wrong thing, I want to interact, I will do that, or I will interject possibly. But if not, then just take your own decisions. And that's the key part that we see every single time, is that that works way more efficient. But it's a different leadership style. That general cannot be direct and controlling anymore. They can't say, this is what you need to do. That means you need to step back and you need to start thinking about what do I need to do to be able to support that team. So the general might say, hey, I have some new information that I think is valuable for your mission. Please take this into account. Yeah? It's a different way of saying you need to do this. And that's what we're going to see in organizations. That's evolving the culture. Why do we do this through BRM? Because BRMs are quite often in that position where you're bringing the right people together, where you're driving the right behavior, where you're focusing continuously on value, where you start thinking about what can we do to drive the right information at the right time. So, one of the parts about language is, and I just put this on normally, I mean I can go this one by one, which I'm not going to do. But we're starting to see that language is important. Fellini said a new language is a new vision of life. I speak two languages, crappy, both of them, English and Dutch. I grew up with Dutch, but that's now difficult when I go over there. And English, there's still words, etc. I can't pronounce properly, according to some people. But it depends which region I'm in. So it's if you go to the southern U.S., it's different than in the northern states. But it's language does give you different vision. You see things differently. We also need to start thinking that from a mindset perspective and from a culture perspective within evolving the culture, because we need to start thinking about, can we use language in such a way to drive that strategic partnership, to drive that convergence. Now, things like service and service provider and the term customer has been used a long time. And some of you have done training courses in the past, and everyone has something like, we're going to be that service provider, and we're going to have customers. The challenge is that by calling yourself a service provider and talking about customers, that you automatically put a barrier up. So we're trying to look now for words, how can we reduce that barrier? How can we change that barrier? And that means through business partner, calling your customer business partner or peer. We're not talking about alignment or convergence. We're talking more about shared ownership instead of the word accountability. I'm not against the word accountability, but to be honest, a lot of organizations, the moment you say accountability, half of the room actually scatters away because they don't want to be involved in this. So for me, it's important that accountability is being replaced maybe by a word that is more working together. Ownership has a little bit more that togetherness. Yeah. Recognized value. Project managers have had the tendency to always talk about benefits, not necessarily value. Most of them talk about benefits realization. And one of the things I'm doing now is actually really offsetting that with, we're going to talk about value realized and value recognized, specifically value results that we are recognizing, and those I want really in the phase after a project has delivered something, and we're trying to get our business groups to really drive that. Now, what do we tell executives? What is the difference in style? We need to start thinking about value recognition. Celebrate your successes. This is one of the challenges. We don't celebrate our successes. We are very good in IT to explain to everyone our negative things. Every single time, IT organization, look, we've solved 10,000 incidents last month. Look how good we are. And I have something like, you failed 10,000 times apparently. Yeah, do you see how that is negative? And what is success? Success is when a nurse in a hospital takes less steps because the technology doesn't require them to go back to their desk to actually do something. They can do it at a desk or at a computer, for instance, close by. It is that acceptance of, yes, we are celebrating that with the business group. Tracking investment progress. How do you track progress? I mean, there is new investments, there is old investment, there is retired, there is operational changes, there is cost reduction, there is risk mitigation. There's all different kind of investments we need to make. How do we categorize that? How do we track that? How do we make sure? Yeah, I worked with one organization that large technical debt in the car retail sector. Well, if you're in car retail sector, I can tell you some of the dealers are very good at building new technology so that if you want to buy a car, you can do this online, you can do all different kind of things. If you're not there yet because your system is not able to support that, you have a huge amount of technical debt that you need to fix. That's again, investment. And we made a balance thing around 70% technical debt for the supply side and then 30% basically looking still at innovation. Deciding what kind of guidance do we need to give, prioritization. The word priority, look it up, the history. When the word priority started in the English language, it meant one thing, just one thing, not multiple things. Nowadays, what is priority? Yeah, we have priorities, yeah? How do you see that from an business perspective? We have 10 priorities. Well, which one is the most important? Because we can't do all of 10. You need to do all 10 of them. Yeah, they're all priority, which doesn't work. Yeah, the whole thing doesn't work anymore. So again, it's the wording there is kind of interesting. Communicate. We don't communicate enough. We don't understand sometimes risks. We don't understand sometimes the whole communication around that. Now, when we look at from a BRM perspective, what we need to do is focus on being more purpose-based. I didn't really talk about purpose-based, but purpose is really focused on organizational purpose, your own purpose. If you ever want to read a really good book around that, Essentialism is the book is called. It really focuses, okay, what is your purpose? What is your organization purpose? How do you focus on that? Instead of being pulled in 10 different directions, okay, focus on that purpose, that single purpose that you need to do. Every organization should have something like that, and of course it needs to be value driven. Every single technology you have, or every single person you have in your organization needs to drive that value. We need to get savvy C-suite. Increasing executive savviness, some of them come already in, but they need to start recognizing that we need to drive value. We need to start thinking about culture, going to more team-based. And I started with, okay, where is BRM in 10 years? BRM is in 10 years with working with teams. And I'll use a company that is worldwide sales and marketing of a product that is being grown in multiple regions. And they have maybe something like 600 people worldwide that do this, and 60 people in IT, maybe, 10 BRMs. And you have something like, why do you have so many BRMs? Because for me, that's even like, I mean, 60 people in IT and then 10 BRMs, oh, that's different. So when you start asking that, you get the answer, everything is outsourced. Everything that is commodity is outsourced. The only thing we have in IT is business architects, enterprise architects, to be able to build systems, to build the technology, to build the part. Of course you have HR, but you also have business relationship managers that are managing the relationships between all the different providers that are external and the organization itself. And I've seen more and more organizations going in that direction, where everything that is commodity is starting to become outsourced, and everything that is new, innovative, is being done in-house or done with vendors that actually do this. And this is where I see the future of BRM being bright. Why? Because BRM is going to drive that value even with the vendors. BRM is going to drive those partnerships and is going to drive for the organization the value that we're going to see and what that element is going to be. Thank you.